At the start of 2022, here in Las Vegas, the housing market was on fire. We saw home appreciation and value soar to all-time highs. And then you look at low interest rates and how they perform very well, really making it a competitive market for home buyers out there to compete against one another to find the right home. In Las Vegas, you see this quite a bit. And when you look at the inventory levels we saw, we had really low, record low inventory levels here in Las Vegas, really across the country. And so what we needed was rates to go higher to really slow the economy down. And I thought, looking at rates, if they hit 4.5%, we're really going to see a reduction in the amount of people out there buying homes. We started to see that, but we're now saying, look, we've reached application levels at 2009. Where's all the inventory? So first off, I want to say happy Memorial Day to all the veterans out there. Hope you guys have a safe and happy weekend. And I'm just providing this market French wrap update here on what's happening with the markets, what's happening with financing, what's happening with real estate, and just giving you my perspective and opinion on what I think is going to continue to happen moving forward on a week-by-week basis. So let's get right into this. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get into this. I was reading an interesting article on pending sales and also just values of homes in Las Vegas and how we're slowing down. And I want to talk about this article, a very interesting article I was reading. If you guys don't know, I'm a real estate agent lender here in Las Vegas. And on this channel, I want to wrap up on every Friday from here. I'm going to start talking about what's going on with the real estate and financing sectors and just give my opinion on this and just some of the data and some of the information that I read. So let's get right into this. We look at the housing market here and the demand is still high, not as high as it was right at the start of 2022, but it's still high. And you look at what people are willing to do to get into a home, you still have multiple offers going on. Low inventory. There's reasons for this. So we see purchase applications declined since, back in 2009. That's the numbers we're seeing comparing it. That's how low it is right now. What's different about it though is, you don't have the same foreclosure process or foreclosures going on these homes that we saw. And really it was due because of a credit boom. Right, 2002 to 2005, we saw a credit boom happening here in Las Vegas. And then you look at people staying in their homes longer. So you're seeing all these things contributing to why, even though low inventory and we have higher rates, because higher rates are really, they help this market, right? I'm a team higher rate guy right now. It doesn't mean I want to have it forever, but we do need rates to bring this market down and really take it away from being as hot as it is. It needs to really balance itself. And so you look at that, you look at people staying in their homes 5 to 7 years prior to where we're at today. Let's say, I think till 2015, the average person stayed in their home was, from, 5 to 7 years. Now it's 11 to 15 years, right around that 700 to $1 million. I would say maybe 750 to $1 million, where you're starting to see homes sit on the market a little bit longer, and you're also seeing price reductions. A lot of it is due because of interest rates. We all know inflation's high. So this is right now the peak time for people to start moving. What's interesting about it is you're still not seeing a complete stop of people trying to buy homes though, even though we're above 5% on interest rates. People still want to come and buy homes. It's just not at the capacity, not at the pace that we saw let's say back in 2009 or when we had the crash, right? So we're starting to see this happening in the field when I'm out there talking to different people, different agents, and the forced bidding that people are going through is not as much. You're starting to see both sides trying to work together to get an offer accepted where you didn't before. It was just decline or not accepted or rejected. You're starting to see, especially in price points, like I said, that 750 to 900,000. That's really where people are like, okay, we're not getting a ton of offers there. We may have to reduce. We may have to figure out how we can make this work if we can. So you look at the purchase application data that I'm seeing, it's really slowing down. You're seeing numbers 0.2% on a week over week basis for purchase applications. It's very small growth. Now, year over year, we're declined 16%. the 4-week moving average, we've declined 12%. And so you're starting to see these numbers, and you're starting to see, okay, well, we're back to the markets that we saw. We know that, inventory is going to come back. Well, not so fast, because like I said, people are staying in their homes longer, and the credit boom and bust that we had previously, that's not there. People before had gone through foreclosures, bankruptcies, things like that. Well, that's not there anymore. Okay, so what it really comes down to in this Las Vegas market, I'm gonna give you my opinion on what I think is going to happen here. Rates have gone up, and we've seen a decline, right? We're talking about it right now. Purchase applications are down. Just overall, people's psychological position on buying a home is down. I have buyers that are backing out on new homes because rates are higher. They can't afford the payment. Maybe they lost money in the stock market. We've seen the stock market woes here recently. So there's just a lot of uncertainty what's happening in the markets. Then you bring in inflation, higher cost of living, people only buying necessity things, not non-necessity things. So the psychological effect it's having on people to buy, they're backing out of these new homes. New home builders are really looking at this going, hey, we don't want to overbuild like we did before. So they have more inventory on standing inventory because of these fallouts. And so you may be able to get into a house on a new home, and you're going to, maybe see some of these homes where they're trying to give things away, incentives, even more than what they are now with these builders. And then maybe you're going to start to see a slower process of these homes being built. So a lot of these builders have learned from that, but it still doesn't take away what we see what's happening in the markets right now, where people are backing out and retracting because of higher rates. And then you look at the resale side of it, there's a lot more people willing to work. I'm out there negotiating all the time. So you have buyer, seller. You have to really work the selling side a little bit on some of these homes. Some are turnkey ready, and you're going to get that forced bidding where you're going to have that multiple offer scenario going on. But overall, we're softening. We're seeing it. I can see it firsthand. And I think this economy here in Las Vegas is going to continue to do that. Is it still going to be a high demand for these properties? Sure. That's not going to go away. But I do feel that people are now going to be a little bit more strategic. We see it in the luxury market. There's a lot of people out there in the luxury market that want to go out and buy homes, but even them, they're sitting on the sidelines. They're not going to just go all in and be in that competition battle, bidding against others like we've seen, because once rates have gone up, that's when you see that market shift, and that's what we're seeing right now. So I want to talk about, really who has a shot at buying a home, in my opinion, these days. And, there's an interesting question that came to me about, well, what do you consider middle class? And that's a good question. A lot of people don't understand how you actually get in that genre or that classification of middle class. So you have the upper middle class, which is, the higher wage earnings. And then you have the middle to lower income wage earnings, which I would consider in middle class. Now, there's many different arrays of ways you could think about what middle class is and how you perceive, or you are perceived as a middle class person in our society. So the 67% to 200% of the average median income for wage earnings, that's considered middle class when you're talking about income. When you're talking about the housing side of it, well, they always look at the lower to middle income households. Can they afford to buy a home in whatever market? Everybody makes different money, has different income levels, and different pricing in different regions, different cities, right? So it's hard to really gauge that and have a real concise answer on how you answer that question. For me, this is just my opinion on what I think middle class is, and if you're middle class, can you actually afford a home? So it really comes down to, is that market, does it supply a healthy market of supply and demand, where it's not a pendulum where one side is higher than the other. I think when you have an abundance of homes on the market, it does present opportunity for somebody like a lower or middle income household to make an offer and get it accepted, because sellers are willing to work with you. And there's a separation now happening where you have the middle wage income earners that are on the higher tier versus the lower tier, and that separation is getting bigger because as you go through, income inequality is becoming a bigger problem, especially here, not just in Las Vegas, but across the country. So you look at these things and you say, okay, who's middle class? Who's actually going to be able to buy a home like this? And how do you get into that classification? Because I thought it was a very good question. If you're a person out there that does not have reserves or cannot have the ability does not have the ability to go and offer above list, compete against some of these people buying a home. We all know everybody's equity rich. So it's not really about the equity part of it. It's, can you buy into a high price home or a higher home in today's market? And can you compete with other buyers? And also, can you afford and sustain that mortgage payment if you're getting a mortgage? So the reason why I say it's income inequality here is because you're getting people that are coming from other states, as we talk about, and putting large amounts down, being equity rich. I think you look at the position of where people are at. Can they afford a house at a tier of, being able to offer above list and still affording the mortgage, and also not being mortgage broke? So being mortgage broke is you're squeezing everything you can to get into a house, and maybe you don't have a lot of money to put down, or extra money as reserves, they call it. Those people are the middle to lower income households, and those wage earnings are typically people that are, if they have one household income, they don't have two. But in today's world, you got to look, well, what's the average price of a home? It's $500,000 here in Las Vegas. What's the mortgage on that? Well, if you put the minimum down, that's $3,000, right? So if you say could be $3,500, then you got to say, well, okay, well, what do I need to make to get into that house? Well, you probably need to make at least $8,000 to $10,000 a month. If your family is not pulling in $8,000 to $10,000 a month on a house that you're in today, or trying to get into the average house today, then potentially you're not going to be able to buy that house if you don't have extra money to put down on a house and compete with these other buyers. Unfortunately, that my definition of middle class or middle income wage earnings doesn't mean it's it's a bad thing. It just means you can't compete. You have the upper middle class that typically have two households making double digits minimum on both incomes, maybe just on one. Maybe they're making $20,000 a month, and then they have extra reserves. They could put money down, and they have options. And I think that separation, where you see that lower income inequality that's happening here in Las Vegas, is really becoming separate versus the higher income. And if you look at the where people are at today in the luxury market, you just look back, last year, halfway into last year, it's about $1.5 million, right? 1.5 million. Today, it's 3 million. So that, to me, if you can qualify for a home at 3 million and you're putting the minimum down, that means you're making a significant amount of money. That probably means you're in that luxury market, and you're that top tier of people out there that can be able to buy a home at that luxury price. So I think that's how you really look at it. You look at it at regions, you look at it the competition, what market you're in, and then also what is the bidding and competition you're dealing with, and do you have reserves? Do you have extra options on the side than somebody just pushing everything together just to make a deal work or get something closed? They're giving minimum amount down payment. Maybe they need a gift. Maybe they don't have a ton of reserves in case something happens, or if they have to bid against somebody else. So that was a very good question. I wanted to answer that. So in today's market, you are seeing a lot more people just sitting on the sidelines that are at that middle to lower income wage earnings, because they just have no options competing against these upper tier income wage earning families, or just people in general. So let's talk a little bit about what rates are doing right now, and also in the financing sector, what's happening. You're seeing incentives still give out from builders, and so builders are still trying to give people money to go buy homes. You got to look at those numbers, right? You got to see what's really out there, because if builders say, we're giving you X amount of money, there's nothing free. And I always say that. So you really got to run the numbers on that, making sure that you're not overpaying or you're getting overcharged for origination costs, things like that. And then, talking about rate locks, 6-month, 12-month rate locks. Those locks cost money, right? For people out there trying to buy a house. So you have to look, what is the cost on that? Usually, well, 6 months is about a point. That means if you have a $500,000 house, it would cost you $5,000 to lock that rate in for 6 months. Now, builders are not really following exactly the timelines, as we know. So what that does is you're pushing these timelines back further, and you may have to pay an extension cost. So that's something to look at. I'm also looking at secondary homes, investment properties, both. There's investment where you're putting 20% down to rent out the property, run it as a business, or if you're buying a secondary home. These rates are the loan level pricing adjustments that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac has given to banks to offer to clients is pushing these rates far beyond what people are able to spend. 10% down was the original on a secondary home. Now we have to do 20% minimum, and it's just really market conditions. There's no other definition beyond it. It's just, if you want to play the game, you're going to have to pay some money. And so we're starting to see that part of it. And you know, you look at the inflation numbers, GDP, we've retracted 1.5% recently on the recent numbers that's come out. So you're seeing the economy starting to come down a little bit. It's not swelling like it was before. And then you also look at what's going on with the inflation numbers, how I feel that might have peaked as well, just like the mortgage rates. There's some signs out there that long-term inflation is starting to see some numbers come down. Now the Fed is talking about maybe not raising the Fed's fund rate another 2 more times. They want to see what's going to happen by the end of the year. And so there's levers, there's things that the Fed can do. It doesn't mean it's always going to work, but it's that balancing act I talked about. You know, the Fed is always that Fed funds rate. That's the short-term bond that they're raising. Car loans, student loans, signature loans, credit cards. That affects people's purchasing power, or maybe getting a loan for some reason, and what rate they get, because those banks, they're giving out, you know, that pricing or that percentage on an overnight basis to other banks to extend out to the consumer. Into that part of it too. Overall, I feel like the economy is starting to peak a little bit. Housing here, like I said, is peaked in Las Vegas. Overall, I still feel people are spending money. They're just spending it on necessity things, and you're going to continue to see that until I feel that people's confidence gets better. But the financing sector has slowed down. Refinances are gone. If you have cash out refinances, I'm helping people with cash out, but that's just to pay off other debt usually. People aren't paying, you know, taking money out and paying for things like, you know, toys and non-necessity things. They're keeping the equity, keeping it rich inside their home that they own, and really just sitting and waiting and sitting tight to see what happens. I think a lot of people learn from what happened back in 2006, 7, and 8. So you guys have any questions? I'm Dan French. This is the French Wrap here on Friday. And if you guys have any questions, comments, leave them in the comment section. Love to answer all your questions. Love to work for you and earn your business. Subscribe to my channel right here, The Sound Off, and we'll see you guys at the next one.